Thanks so much, everybody. So I'm Wander, and
I'm Nick S.
We're the co-founders of NodeSet. We're proud to be the first smart contract protocol trying to extend Rocket Pool. So if you don't know a little bit about us, we were early DAO contributors, node operators, builders. We joined the Rocket Pool community about a year before the launch. It's been an incredible ride. Holy crap. I can't imagine. I mean, I joined a Discord community 3 years ago, and here we are speaking at a big convention just specifically for Rocket Pool. It's truly amazing how far this community has come. So Nick and I met each other inside the Rocket Pool community, specifically because we were node operators, and we thought, wow, you know what's great about Rocket Pool? Node operators. What we really need to do is get more assets into the existing node operator base. So we experimented for a while, came up with a lot of different concepts and ideas, and what came out of it was something called Constellation. Constellation is a second layer staking protocol which is built on top of Rocket Pool. It's taken us about a couple of years to get to the point where we can talk about it in this deep detail, and Houston, fortunately, is coming out soon to allow it to be even possible in the first place. So thank you for the Rocket Pool team for even giving us the time of day to realize that growing Rocket Pool needed to happen. So let's talk about, before we talk about Constellation, before we talk about what it does, before we talk about what it can do for node operators, let's start at step one. Why does Rocket Pool need Constellation? Or why does Rocket Pool need more assets in the hands of node operators? So on the left, you'll see here that there is I don't know if didn't intend to highlight that, sorry, but there's a big graph here. You can thank Invis for generating this Dune dashboard, which includes node operator bonded ETH for all time. And that's just since the beginning of Rocket Pool's launch. And on the right here, you'll see just this little segment of it is in the last 365 days. So it's pretty clear at this point. You can call it, my personal favorite name for it is the Great Flattening. What we've done here is we've achieved something really impressive. This actually seems really bad at first. If you look at this and you think, oh my gosh, wow, well, Rocket Pool can't grow anymore. What this actually means, though, is that we've achieved consistent growth for 2 whole years. And finally, at some point, this highly technical, extremely difficult, very niche thing has hit its maximum at like 3,000 different nodes all across the world. It's absolutely amazing. Like, we really need to be giving ourselves a pat on the back as a community for getting to that point. And the other thing to keep in mind about all of this, rETH demand consistently there throughout the entire thing. If you look at that slope, it doesn't like kind of come out a little bit and then go up and then kind of stop again. It's up. It just goes straight up. Everybody loves rETH. So the real question is, how can we get more assets into the hands of existing node operators who exist today and not do anything to stop Rocket Pool from existing as it is? We want to continue to invite new node operators into the system while also encouraging the ones that are already here to do more and to have more power to grow the system. So here's a couple ideas that people have come up with to grow Rocket Pool. I'm just going to go ahead and take this out because I like to talk with my hands. So what you'll see on this slide is that there's a set of 3 different main categories of concepts for growing Rocket Pool. And ultimately, they are not mutually exclusive. We can and should do all of these things if we can. But I want to go over each of these and talk about how the first 2 especially are a little bit harder than you might think they are. And the last one actually is already here. It's Houston. We're going to get May 6th at 00 UTC. So it's happening. But let's talk about the first 2 before we start talking about L2s, the concept of Constellation. So first, when you talk about LEBs, before anything, we have to talk about how amazing LEBs have been for Rocket Pool. It's a true accomplishment. It's actually really, really impressive that it has literally just doubled Rocket Pool's TVL to go from LEB 16 to LEB 8. I guess LEB 16 is kind of a misnomer, but the point is that it works. It's proven. It will grow Rocket Pool's TVL if we reduce LEB further. It will happen. We know it happens because it has happened in the past. So that's really, really fantastic. This is a wonderful thing. And everything that I'm going to talk about after this, keep that in the backdrop, right? Like this is a green light that says, let's go ahead and do this, okay? But we do need to be aware of some of the things that are going to happen because of LEVs if we continue to drive it down. So for one, right now at LEV8s, we don't really have too much of an issue with MEV theft. It's not really an issue. However, if we drive it down further, there is the potential for LEV8s, or I'm sorry, LEV4s and LEV2s to allow folks to steal MEV from our ETH holders. Now, there are some folks in the community that say, this isn't so bad, let's do it. Let's drive it up, we'll go to the TVL, we'll accept the MEV theft, and then maybe when we get forced exits, it'll go away, so we'll just improve the product again. Very valid approach, but we just need to be at least aware of what we're doing. We'll do it consciously. The second thing that I think is really more important to consider is that if you go below LEV4s, now you start to get into some concerns surrounding slashing. Our ETH right now, one of the reasons it's so successful, one of the reasons that graph grew so quickly is because there was always demand for the safest LST on the market. That will go away if we start allowing folks to go underneath LEV4s without careful consideration. Again, it may be possible to do it. There are especially some interesting designs that are being thrown around the community at this point that I really want to see develop further. But we just have to be aware of this. It's not an easy thing to do. You can't just turn the dial down and say, all right, LEV1s tomorrow, let's do it. You need to be aware that there's some second order effects here. So the final thing, and this is actually something that we really believe heavily at NodeSet, is one of Rocket Pool's strengths, is its decentralization. We have 3,000 nodes, which is just truly impressive. And the top 10 nodes on Rocket Pool do have quite a bit of TVL, but they don't necessarily control the network. This isn't a Lido situation where there's a certain number of node operators and they just essentially are 100% in control. The CSM for Lido is not going to change that. So one thing that we need to keep in mind, though, for LEVs is if you go down a certain point, you're scaling inequality and you're increasing centralization. All right, so I threw that out there as just as a line, but let's go through an example so that everybody understands what that means. I'm a node operator with 16 Ether. If I go down to LEV4s, my one mini pool can turn into 4 mini pools, which is pretty fantastic. I get a huge uplift in the amount that I can earn. I go to the protocol, that's all great and whatnot. Now Nick over here, Nick's a big whale. He's got 1,600 Ether. Feels good. Yeah, feels good, doesn't it? It's good to be a whale. So he has 100 mini pools under the original Rocket Pool design. So he has 99 more mini pools than I did originally. Under LEV4s, he can create, how many? Anyone do the math? 400 mini pools. That's 300 more mini pools. I only get to create 3 new mini pools because I'm a little shrimp with 16. But Nick over here is throwing his weight around and he's able to create 297 more mini pools than I am. It's a very obvious centralization vector for the protocol. If we get down to LEV2s, yeah, maybe it rockets us up. Maybe our TVL goes to the moon or whatever, but at what cost? Are we becoming Lido in disguise at that point? We need to think heavily about this. It's not necessarily a bad thing to grow the TVL in this fashion. This is again, LEVs are a true, incredible thing. And it grows the promise of Rocket Pool originally, which was with less Ether, you can have more yield. So we can't just throw away the ideas of LEVs, but we need to think carefully about doing it. It's not necessarily a no-brainer. So here's another one that's not necessarily a no-brainer. These are hard things to do. Again, not mutually exclusive. We can do LEVs and we can change the protocol tokenomics. We can make it a little bit more attractive to node operators. Maybe we can take that graph that kind of just petered out, the great flattening, and maybe we can grow it again. If we make some of the current requirements, we change them. We say, all right, there's a few things that maybe make it not so attractive to certain participants in the ecosystem. But again, it's complex. There's a lot of moving parts. Anything that you do is going to have second order effects here. So there's a lot of risk analysis that needs to be done. For one, it could attract a bunch of new node operators. Awesome, that's great. You could go get the girl in the red dress. But what if there's a few folks that bought in and they said, okay, I like existing tokenomics. Many of the folks that bought RPL right now are not even running nodes. If they like the current tokenomics, they don't really care about running nodes. They just happen to like the protocol. Maybe they like the tokenomics, all these kinds of things. If it goes down, you have to offset it, in an equal amount, essentially. It could be a net positive. It could be a huge net positive. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5x, whatever. But it also could be negative. And the only way to know this is to put it on mainnet. We don't know before we go to mainnet whether it's going to be a net positive or a net negative. Not very easily, at least. How do you do that research? It's not a very easy thing to do. Again, it's not impossible, but it's just something we have to be very careful about. And, it's not an easy win. So last thing, I want to point this out because we're builders, we write code. We think about building on top of existing projects. If you change tokenomics, it does make it significantly more difficult to build on top of a project. It takes years to design a protocol, to build it, to audit it, to fund it, all these kinds of things. So if you change tokenomics, then it disincentivizes builders from building on top. So what we would recommend, at least as builders, is try to take one small thing and change something small and see if that works. And if it doesn't work, roll it back. Maybe try something different if you really have to. A lot of people really like the existing tokenomics. And so I'll quote Patricio Wertalter, the largest RPL holder. Be careful. That's what he said. That's what he specifically said about tokenomics changes. So just put that out there. All right. So one thing that I want to talk about here before anything, building on top of Rocket Pool means that we don't change the base protocol at all. There are no risks associated with it. And we're fulfilling the same contract that node operators fulfill today. You can have your cake, you can eat it too. There's no additional risk. And what we're building with Constellation gives you an equitable distribution, unlike LEDs. So Constellation, we'll talk about how this works and what the specific architecture is in a second. But I want to point out exactly the pros and cons here. Well, there's not really any cons, frankly. I mean, it was a con for us because we had to spend a lot of money and time and energy building it. But other than that, there's really only pros. The fact that it exists is going to grow Rocket Pool. There's nothing of what we've done that changes the basic protocol to make it worse. It only enhances it. And it only enhances it for node operators. It makes it's a win-win for everybody. So it'll distribute assets. The idea is that we will take assets and give them to existing node operators. Just imagine magically for a second we can do that. Well, I'll describe how it's done in a second, but that's much better than an LEB where you're taking the same existing inequality and you're multiplying it. So in this case, what we're going to be doing is we're taking the same assets and we're distributing it across everybody. So the effect that this has is to massively uplift the rETH capacity of the protocol. Every Ether invested into our project will grow the rETH TVL by 3 times as much because of LEB8s. If we were to go down to LEB4s, that would be a 7 times uplift. So by design, nothing that we're building will ever actually overtake or even come close to overtaking Rocket Pool. It's not an attack in any form. I've had a couple of people come be like, isn't what you're building like an attack on Rocket Pool? No, not at all. Actually, it's a multiplier of Rocket Pool. It makes Rocket Pool so much larger than what it would have been without us. So the final thing is for the actual node operators to participate in this, your only cost is to pay gas, and it's just to sort of prevent essentially some spam attacks. And so your cost is very minimal. And in a second, we're going to get to some of the moon math on actually what you as a node operator can earn in this system. And I think people are going to be really shocked. The numbers are truly impressive. So let's talk about real quickly how this is actually accomplished. So at a very, very high level, only the right side of this equation exists right now. It's Rocket Pool with the rETH deposit pool, super abstract, but basically the rETH kind of gets paired with the node operators who bring their own Ether. What we do, they have to bring their own Ether and their own RPL. What we've done is liquidized that portion of the equation. And on the left, you'll see XRPL and XRETH, which are our 2 new liquid staking tokens that people can deposit into these deposit pools. And it is non-custodially putting assets into existing node operators so that they can grow their validation count on their current machines. and we should let this sink in for a second. This is magical stuff. I mean, it's really impressive. There's no way for anybody to steal from anybody doing this. We don't collect your information. I don't want that responsibility. We really, all we do is we check to make sure, are you going to be a responsible node operator? Can you sign a message with a validator that says, yeah, I've been online for 95% of my attestations and whatnot. Okay, cool. You are definitely going to be a good validator for the system. And we have so many node operators already. We have 150 node operators who have signed up already and met our expectations. Yeah, it's incredible.
Appreciate it.
So because we have 150, we can distribute assets so much. And honestly, there's no reason, we're not like Lido. We want to grow. We want to have as many node operators as possible. The more node operators we have, the better the system gets, the safer it is for everybody. So at the end of the day, we'll talk in a second about how great XRETH and XRPL are for, it's a new class of users, basically, that doesn't exist in Rocket Pool right now. And so it even brings in new people who are going to be attracted to different kinds of tokenomics. And again, nothing in the base Rocket Pool had to change at all in order to get here. So now I'm going to pass it off to Nick, who will talk a little bit about the new classes of users and how Constellation is going to serve them.
Thanks, Mike. So obviously, we're going to have three major classes of users. First are the XRETH holders. XRETH is a permissionless liquid staking token with minimal slashing risk, which is a totally unique product on the market. So you may ask, how is that possible? Well, thankfully, when we deploy assets into validators through Constellation, the vast majority of earnings are basically taken from the rETH commission. It's split 50-50 between us, the protocol, and you, the node operator. Thus, we can offer a commissionless product. And that's a totally unique thing in the marketplace, and there's a lot of interest in that kind of product. Fantastically, as Mike said, we are distributing this evenly across as many node operators as possible. And I've had the opportunity to speak with over 150 of you over the last 2 or 3 months. And it's been a fantastic experience. There are so many talented, interesting, passionate people in this community, and I know there are so many more. So we're really excited to continue talking to you guys and bringing you on board in the months ahead. About 85% of you are software engineers, electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, a lot of technical skill, and the rest have been generally professionals who are all extremely invested in ensuring their systems have high uptime and are resilient. You're also all over the world. We're across all geos. We'd like to see more in Southeast Asia. We'd like to see more in Africa. And frankly, we would like to work with those of you out there who are interested in incentivizing users from those regions to join. Of course, for XRETH holders, you're going to be basically putting your assets into a highly distributed, resilient system with the best Rocket Pool operators that have already demonstrated their performance over the last 6 to 12 months or 2 years in some cases. Of course, we'll be working with various partners in the ecosystem to integrate, across various DeFi platforms. And NodeSet is a participating node operator with EigenLayer, and we'll be looking into numerous restaking opportunities in the weeks ahead. So, of course, months ahead. So we're excited to work with Jasper on thinking about more creative ideas there. Okay, second class of users, XRPL holders. As you all know, right now, about 50% of RPL remains unstaked. Speculative holders, large whales who are over-collateralized. There's a ton out there that's just not currently productive. We would like to deploy it. We would like to deploy it across our operator base and juice rETH as much as possible. In general, this will allow these holders to earn direct emissions from the protocol, which is a higher yield than any existing DeFi opportunities when it comes to RPL.
But this is the point behind RPL emissions in the first place, as you mentioned, is that it's supposed to be an incentivization mechanism for creating mini pools. And that's what this does, is if you can currently, if you hold RPL and you have no mini pools that you're running, you're not helping Rocket Pool. I don't mean to be mean like that, but you're not helping grow the TVL in the way that you could be if you deposit it into XRP.
Right. So our system allows us to deploy RPL in the most efficient way possible. It'll be auto-balanced on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, and that'll ensure that the assets are being, just maximized from an economic growth perspective. Finally, on the node operator side, sorry guys, as Mike mentioned, joining NodeSet and Constellation is free. You simply apply, you talk to us, we do a simple check, we check to make sure that your performance is reasonable, and from there, you simply validate. We distribute assets, and you run into perpetuity. Really importantly, I'd also like to note that we allow you to delegate your RPL voting power however you see fit. We have no interest in hoarding RPL voting power. That is for you to decide. And, you know, it's really critical, we think, for the health of the protocol to ensure that occurs. So next, we're going to go on some moon math. If
This is the good stuff.
yeah. So basically, a current TVL of the protocol is around 850,000 Ether. If XRETH was to achieve 10% of that TVL and 85,000 XRETH, that would be boosting the protocol's TVL by about 250,000 rETH. And with LAB4s, that would be raised to about 600,000. Now, if we were to freeze the system, our system today, and not allow any other operators to join, that would basically equate to 70 mini pools apiece with LAB8s. And of course, with LAB4s, that would multiply by 2. As I mentioned, you're earning half of the commissions from the rETH. Thus, that would equate to about 4.6 ETH per year per operator for LAB8s and be about 10.9 ETH per year for LAB4s. So that's a pretty considerable increase in your earnings. And I think it's really important to note that the distribution of the system is designed such that we really, really disproportionately benefit the small operator. It is 100% critical to us to distribute assets in a way that incentivizes the marginal small operator to join the system. And this is a really powerful way to do that. So just again, to look at this at a high level, if you're running one personal mini pool, and we were happy to be in the moon math scenario, the amount of earnings you'd receive in ETH denominated yields is absurd. It's 11.3x with LAB8s and 35x with LAB4s. Let's move to a more realistic scenario. Let's say that we onboard another 150 node operators. So we're sitting around 300 or so. And for anyone who's running one mini pool, in that scenario, you're going to be earning 6.2x ETH cash flows from the system. Now, if you're running 10 mini pools, you've got more assets bonded, and the returns go down relatively. So as you can see, the larger the operator gets, it's the exact same benefit, in terms of just pure Ether earned, but the proportional benefits are less. And we think that's an important thing to note, right? We really want to disproportionately benefit the marginal small scale operator. And frankly, I think that this kind of solution makes things like joining the Lido CSM obsolete. Why would you want to join the CSM when you can join Rocket Pool, spin up one validator, 3 validators, 5 validators, and then in a couple months, qualify to join NodeSet and receive distributions to boost your earnings tremendously. And of course, these kinds of ETH-denominated cash flows offsets any RPL price exposure risk, right? A lot of marginal operators who are saying, the recent volatility has caused me to have second thoughts. Should I be joining Rocket Pool over some other competitor? That is no longer a question in anyone's minds. Okay, so we need to edit this. But we are currently in client development, smart contract testing. We are going to be hopefully entering audits soon. We'll have to change the scheduling slightly based on the news we got today, but that's all right. And we're incredibly excited to be coming to mainnet later this year and being able to enable this for the entire Rocket Pool community. We're extremely excited, and we'll be coming as soon as we can. So just in terms of concluding remarks, coming soon. Fear not, this is going to be a really exciting way to grow the protocol, to put earnings into the independent node operators' hands. We are so incredibly thankful to the community who's shown us so much support thus far, to the Rocket Pool team especially, who've been collaborating with us on a regular basis over the last 6 to 9 months. It's really been an incredible experience, and for me, it's been incredible talking to so many interesting, talented people. We're really looking forward to continuing to work with all of you. The goal here is to increase the node operators in the system. For each operator we get, we reduce overall protocol exposure and improve resilience. So I would like to have 300 node operators by the time we launch later this year, and ideally 400 to 500 by the end of the year. Of course, there's been a ton of talk around tokenomics, critical to the development of the protocol, critical to the competitiveness of the protocol in the future. Mike shared some initial thoughts. We're going to be putting out a research paper in the weeks ahead. I think that there's a lot of exciting opportunity here to sort of synthesize tokenomics research and development with what we're building to basically supercharge Rocket Pool moving forward, and to do so in a way that preserves the independent operator. As Jasper was mentioning, there are a number of future upgrades to Ethereum which could further squeeze the independent operator out of the equation. With MDV burn, that's major impact. And of course, any changes to the issuance schedule is also perhaps very detrimental to the survivability of an independent operator. So we are very focused on ensuring that individuals thrive no matter what the environment is, even if it happened to be a worst case scenario. So thank you all. Really appreciate it. It's been really awesome getting to know you all here, and we're excited to keep working with you. And we'll leave this for your.
We'll leave this up. You can ask us questions about this too if you'd like, but this is going to be our backdrop for questions. So please feel free to raise your hands.
If you have any questions.
Yeah.
I've got two questions. The first one is, can you talk a little bit about any design challenges you face in the pre-signed exit messages and how the trust assumptions around that have evolved? And then the second question is, how did you guys get to the 50% number? It seems like NodeSet as the entity teaches 50%. I'm just curious how you got there.
Yeah, absolutely. First question is going to be surrounding the technical challenges for pre-signed exit messages. So I think what Jasper is alluding to here, for those not in the know, is that Joe calls this a bug. There is a requirement in the exit message for Ethereum validators for you to provide your index, not your public key. The index is only received after you've actually successfully made a confirmed deposit to the beacon chain. So the difficulty here is that means that people can't actually give, so in order for NodeSet to remain safe, we have no way of ensuring liquidity. I mean, node operators could hold on to liquidity forever. The only way to, remain safe before we get the forced exits with EIP 7002, which is coming in Electra, hopefully with Prague/Electra, hopefully later this year, but you never really know. So until that point, we're going to have to retain pre-signed exit messages. This is kind of the stopgap. It's not really great. We don't like it either. But we need to make sure that anybody who deposits into XRETH can actually withdraw at the same level. So to do that, we've had to design this pretty in-depth mechanism. We have I can't go into the security details surrounding, how we keep pre-signed exit messages for obvious reasons, but we're designing and this is actually true of everything that we're building. We have a system that will require you to submit the pre-signed exit message for every prior validator that you have. So you can create one and we'll kind of trust you essentially to give us the validator pre-signed exit message. And then if you don't do that, we just won't allow you to create more validators. So there is technically some small level of theoretical, a node operator could take, they could make one validator and then they could send a message to us that says, hey, I'm blackmailing you and I'm not going to release these funds ever until you give me 8 Ether or something like that. But the overall amount that would actually be impacted by an event like that would be super low. And again, pre-signed exit messages are sort of a stopgap until we get to the point in Electra or Prague, Pectra, hopefully later this year. So we could just upgrade the protocol to force the exit at that point instead. So hopefully that answers your first question. In terms of the second question, would you repeat the second question? I'm sorry.
How did you decide 50% as the NodeSet?
Okay. So, and this is really a philosophical thing. We believe that ultimately this is a partnership. This is an equal partnership. If node operators didn't exist, NodeSet could not build anything that utilized node operators. And at the same time, if NodeSet didn't exist, you would not be receiving extra income. So we view it as an equal partnership. We also, with this 50%, we're not simply just like taking our cut and running, and going skiing or whatever. We're going to go skiing, but we're going to be working while we're out there. This 50% will go towards things like incentivization of the protocol. We can reinvest back into the Rocket Pool community. We can do things like potentially building another client for Rocket Pool. We could maybe try to help with RPL liquidity on the markets. There's so many different things that can be done with that essentially it's a net positive to the ecosystem. So
Also, Constellation V2, when megapools come out, that's going to require significant rework on our side. Right?
Yeah.
We need to be investing heavily over the next 6 to 9 months as that comes to market. And, engineers are expensive.
Yeah, developing a protocol is not cheap. Obviously, I think everybody knows that. We don't have an ERC20 that we want. We didn't want to tack on additional tokens on top of this. We felt like it was really important to go ahead and just do the best we could to make ETH cash flow so that we could, directly reinvest in instead of building some kind of randomized Ponzi governance token that, got shot to the moon and didn't have anything actually backing it. So, we could have designed all this extra complexity to go along with that, but we felt that the best thing to do was just to take a step back and say, you know what, we're helping everybody by bringing this to market. It needs continuous development. And at the same time, we can't build something without node operators. So 50-50 was sort of the philosophical best approach that we could have had. If you wanted to be super extractive about it, yeah, we could. There's no competitors. Theoretically, we could take 95%, right? But that's not going to make people very happy. Nobody's going to use the protocol in the long run, and we're going to feel like absolute scum. So instead, we just decided, the number that makes the most sense from a just purely practical point of view is a 50-50 split. I doubt that's really ever going to change, mostly because of that philosophical reason. If there are other L2s that come to market and they, maybe they reduce their fees or something like that, then we would have to be forced to reevaluate. But there is again the altruistic stuff of helping the ecosystem, which we can only do if we actually have income. So there you go.
Hello. Yo, just had a quick question. Really excited for you guys, but you mentioned the RPL governance for node operators stays the same. So basically, as people stake, they get XRPL. Do the node operators that it's delegated to get boosted governance in this situation?
Yes. Node operators. So the Rocket Pool PDAO has, made the decision that node operators with staked RPL are the only ones that get to contribute to governance. So we extend that philosophy and say XRPL holders do not get any say in governance. Now, if they're big and they want to make a splash on Twitter or something, they're free to do that. But otherwise, they don't actually get any real say in RPL governance. It's the node operators themselves.
Yeah, I guess my concern or question would be, say there's way more demand for XRPL at first than there is for XRETH. So you have a ton of RPL that gets deposited. So now every node operator, they get their maxed governance that maybe they didn't have before. It gets boosted. And we have a quadratic scaling for the governance. So that was the other question I had was, it would be based on bonded ETH as the maximum, right? It's not borrowed ETH. So when you mentioned a 16 16 bonded pool going down to LEV4s, they get 4x the mini pools, right? So same thing with 400 to 4x that. They still have the same governance though, right? Because it's based on the amount of bond that you have. So they're carrying more borrowed ETH, but the governance would still be the same in both scenarios, right?
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Thanks.
You guys have, a decent number of smart contracts in development. I'm presuming you're not going to be ossifying that and making those immutable. How are you going to be managing upgrades on that? What's the, there's some trust assumptions here that might need some discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a timer essentially that says we've developed a fairly lightweight system. We didn't want to add governance layers to any of this. We think that the Rocket Pool PDAO is really the ultimate arbiter of what happens on Rocket Pool. And if we started adding layers of our own on top of that, then things get quickly very messy. So what we decided to do was just keep it sort of as a technical thing and say, okay, we'll propose upgraded contracts as a dev team. We'll have a big multi-sig with lots of folks that I won't tell you who they are, things like that. So if you don't like that, right, this is the same L2 kind of thing that Ethereum has. If you don't like that, then don't use it, right? But there will also be a very long timer on that kind of thing where we haven't discussed the exact date of that. It'll probably be for different functions because there's a lot of different ways that contracts can be upgraded. So there's upgradable logic in a contract, which realistically would have to take the longest amount of time delay for people to withdraw from the system if they didn't like that change. But there's some smaller things that we could do, like changing the size of the XRD deposit pool or something like that. Maybe that only requires like 14 or 21 days or 30 days or something like that. So the idea is that there is a very long time delay specifically so that if people disagree with this, and frankly, we had to build this in some capacity, like you said, because there will be changes to the protocol that we have to adapt to. But we don't necessarily want to undermine the PDAO by essentially adding other governance layers that are separate from Rocket Pool and don't answer to the PDAO and don't have anything to do with RPL or whatever. It just makes everything much more complicated for both us and for Rocket Pool. So again, one of the sort of deep philosophical things that when Nick and I started talking about this idea, one of the first things that we ironed out with it, was this needs to be something that has only a positive effect on everybody who's involved. Rocket Pool node operators, our ETH holders, all of the users of our protocols, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the philosophy that we use.
So let's say that the electronic part or Petra actually happens in November and you guys need to hide more debt. Would you ever consider applying for a grant from the GMC? Why or why not?
Great question. So there's a couple things here. We would consider it for sure. So consideration doesn't mean we would do it. I think in large part it depends entirely upon how receptive the DAO is to our presence in the first place. There's been, unfortunately, in my opinion, some talk amongst some of the more fringe elements that say that what we're building is dangerous. I don't see any real merit to those arguments whatsoever. But I think that there's just some people maybe that don't understand what we're building or whatever. So if that sentiment were to sort of block or kind of stop the development that we would like to have and the benefits that we would like to be able to give, then we would have to say, okay, well, maybe it's not worth applying to a grant when it's just going to cause fighting, right? That's not what we want. But yeah, if we had to move slow, we'll move slow, right? Ultimately, I think it depends on what those changes are, whether they are implemented by Rocket Pool and cause a great deal of stress on us, or whether they are implemented by Rocket Pool and we are, sort of able to foresee those and maybe minimize their effects on Constellation, things like that. So I think that we would probably essentially be forced to ask for grants if there was a pretty significant change that required us to do some major reworking of the code. Simply because if it wasn't possible to actually rewrite the code base to comply with that, then we would kind of be in a rough position from a financial perspective, and we would have to not have a Constellation anymore. That would really suck. It would suck for everybody, right? So that's also why I sort of mentioned tokenomics changes in this presentation in the first place. Is we just, again, to use Patricio's words, we have to be careful. Because there are second order and third order effects that oftentimes aren't really thought about when debating these kinds of things. And a GMC grant is something that could potentially make harder tokenomics changes a little easier to swallow. But there's only so much, and we really wouldn't necessarily want to swallow the entire GMC budget. Like, developers are very expensive. We need to. We also need to be self-sustainable. It's just not fair, right? So hopefully that's a good enough answer.
All right, well, please give another round of applause.
Thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it.